Do-do-do. A bit more regarding how life makes man ordinarily pursue steady, sort of second order sources, chump courses. It makes men, in their apparent attempt to locate themselves, who they are and where they are and etc., that they study, let's just call them for a second, we were talking about it in all sorts of ways, sort of secondary or second order courses to make men study religion, psychology, astrology, rather than some sort of more, shall we say, more direct. And how life requires this. And also how these studies, as we were using examples such as prayer, religion, astrology, that these kind of second order attempts to search and to study, that even if they were efficacious and valid, it would still be less than, I'm going to try to get you to see in a minute, less than maximally efficient, even if they did work. Even if they did work, even if astrology was absolutely what it claims to be, if religion was, that it would still be like the carrot on the pole tied to the horse's harness out in front of him, that no matter if it was, if a carrot is it, if the carrot to the horse is absolutely nourishing astrology, do you understand it's still irrelevant? Because it is still on the basis that you cannot get there from here. No matter where you think there is, and no matter where you think here is right now. That no matter where the horse goes, no matter whether he goes fast, goes slow, takes it easy, takes a left, hangs a right, the relationship stays the same, and wherever he thinks here is, and in his case, here is, I'm going to get the carrot. You can't get there from here. And you can say, well, I'm in the wrong position. I've got to stay to the left because I can tell when I go that way, I get closer. Now, he can think that, but nothing will change. So on that basis, to drag in some of the things that we had already mentioned, that from a revolutionist view, can you see that, put it back another way we had, using brand name instruments of all sorts, whether were generic instruments such as just religion in general, or if it was an absolute brand name like Catholicism or Judaism or Islam, whatever it was, of an absolute brand name aid, a brand name map, one that the cartographer has, to which he has affixed his seal, which may have collective approval. These sorts of maps, these sorts of aids are absolutely required for ordinary people. Whether they take them very, very seriously or not, they are there. Even those, at least that didn't make any more sense in some things, even atheists, make a crude one, are comforted, trust me, are comforted by the fact of knowing, probably from their view, that the rest of these idiots are in church praying and trying to do good. The collective use of brand name investigatory instruments, the second order attempts to study and pursue what life is about, they are of absolute, inescapable necessity. And they are, as I was trying to get you to see by my atheist example, they are in fact by those who verbally reject them and denounce them. The collective warmth of the fires, even those who say that there are far too many fires or that they don't like that particular kind of blaze, everyone still gets warmed by them. That which the collective believe is not actually chump courses, of course. By me saying that to a revolutionist, the question of is religion real or does astrology work is really a dummy question, because to a revolutionist thinking, that's not the question. The question, the revolution would say, let's make it a given. Let's say astrology does work. Then to a revolutionist, the question is, what kind of damn idiot needs it? So what? Now you're back to where I was. The kind of brand names is just another version of this. That even though everyone else needs it, and everyone else at the ordinary level are not dummies by pursuing it, and they are not, me calling it tonight, chump courses of trying to use these kind of ordinary second order maps and aids, would be a kind of chump course. That is, a revolutionist, if we're going to continue that parable, was taking such a course, he'd want his money back. He'd be inclined to punch the professor in the nose after about a few minutes, because he realizes, even if I graduate, even if I pass this course this quarter and get an A+, I still want my money back. I want my money back now. In other words, it is not an equitable contract I have made with life. I got pushed into this. I am pursuing that which the collective says, come right over here, because if you can pass this course, you'll be somebody. And it gets down to this with no sarcasm, which I'm absolutely aware of the fact that if any of you are listening with ordinary ears, that's the only thing you can make of it. It's some sort of criticism, which is not. But if you pursue this course, if it said take this course, and if you can pass this course, if you can graduate from this college, you can do whatever it is. That is, you have pursued some map and completed the journey here, you will be somebody. And of course, ordinary people don't say, well, how will I know? Because it's built into the system, and how they know is that other humans will recognize you as somebody. And I don't mean just as some extreme psychotic form of vanity, whatever it would be called in clinical pathological terms. It's not just that, but why else would anyone go to the trouble to graduate from Harvard? Don't say for a job. Why would they, or even if that was it, then why would they show up for graduation and be sure that the photographer gets their photograph? Why would they hang their diploma on the wall? Not just vanity. It is the built-in comfort of the collective system. But the only way that you know that you have arrived, the only way that you know that you made some sort of progress, is how? Is other humans go, well, my. How nice. There's nothing wrong with that at the ordinary level. But back to that which all you ordinary people go to the ass box. Because I know it sounds like half of you are probably smart asses anyway and going to go, yeah, that's right, life's a bunch of... But think about it. A revolutionist, whatever that may be, trust me, what have you accomplished if other humans, no better, no worse, than your ordinary thinking, which is what we're talking about. This ordinary thinking, we're not talking about fame, fortune, good looks, social position. This is all we're ever talking about. Which, remember, if you can really expand this and get into extraordinary new areas, that kind of neo-revolutionist at times can actually find a parking meter that still has some time left on it. So don't underestimate that. But we're talking about this. If that is the aim, then how can you have any faith? Now you people, you smart asses, you ordinary people are still at the icebox, right? How can you have feel any accommodation, any interest over the fact of other ordinary thinking people at your level, no better, no worse, that they go, well, my, we are indeed impressed. Well, that's fine. That's like being nice to your mama when she says, oh, we got a new preacher at church. And you go, well, how nice. Do you like him? Does he like fried chicken? Is she a decent sort? If she's happy, you'd be happy. For ordinary people, for Harvard, I know that's pushing it with some of you that may have at one time had some faith in education. But to have other people go, my, which is all you can do at the merry-go-round level. That's all you can do at street level in the city. How do you know that you're anybody? much less successful, how do you even know you're anybody? Mirrors, reflections. If people say you're somebody, people say, I know you, or people say, I know you and I don't like you. At least there's some reflection. There is some resistance. You know that you are dancing. You know that your dance floor, your ballroom is still open. Because there's people who will either say, oh, it's you, or people will say, Jesus, it's you. But at least the dance is continuing. At least the binary flow is going through you. Back to where we were, believe it or not. If these kind of brand name investigatory instruments, these great telescopes and microscopes by which everyone else must examine themselves, must test themselves, must try, of course sometimes they think they're looking far off into the cosmos, and other times they try to think they're looking deep into the actual atomic and subatomic structure of nature, which is all, they're trying to find out, where the hell am I? That is, where am I? The thing is, if these instruments did work, if these aids, if these maps did indeed, that are apparently put out to help men locate themselves, if they did do what they said, here is my suggestion to you. That at the end, let's say that an ordinary person, and somewhere thrown in there was a guy trying to do something sort of extraordinary, a would-be revolutionist. And let's say that he pursues something, religion, some form of mysticism, psychology. He undergoes analysis. He studies. He goes through several PhD programs. Got majors and minors from everything from civil engineering to home economics. A true Renaissance man. If indeed, and it seemed to bring about what it said, that after some amount of years, and of course we're talking about before you die, the guy reaches 50, 60, some age, and that yes, what I set out to do, I now feel as though I have some real feel, or I really know where I am. Now, let's say he did that, an ordinary person, which if you notice does not happen, but if it did happen, and a revolutionist did it, the revolutionist would reach that age, and he'd still want his damn money back, because he'd think, Jesus Christ. Once he saw where he was, he would say, and of course I'm just making, I don't know, he'd say Jesus Christ, he'd probably say something worse. But he'd say, Jesus Christ, I wasted 60 years doing this, studying this phony baloney course when all I had to do was look. Do you understand? That even if it worked, which it doesn't work, and it's not religion's fault, it's not astrology's fault, it's the fact that the human intellect is an open-ended system. It's a piece of incomplete work. And so it's not going to accomplish, it's not going to get there from here in your lifetime, no matter what you do. But if it did, which it doesn't, but if a revolutionist studied religion, let's take that, did all the rituals, wore out the knees in his knees, and did beads and lit candles to where his fingernails were scorched. He did everything. And let's say he did it, and by God, no laughter. It gets to be after 50 years of doing it, in confession or whatever rituals it was, that what he thought he was after did work. If he was indeed a revolutionist, whatever I mean by that, especially with a finger point. If it reached that point, that whatever it was that he thought, he wanted to know where he was, what the hell's going on. And after years of pursuing this second order map, after years of studying out there, down here, through these brand name investigatory instruments, let's say that he did reach the point of eureka. He would simultaneously, I suggest to you very strongly, it'd be eureka, and within a split second, he would also be extremely disgusted that he had wasted all this time studying secondary maps rather than just directly looking at what he was trying to see, which he didn't know up until then, but just go, what? And of course, life in its justness, life in its fairness, life in its equity, perhaps life being afraid to do otherwise because we might all gang up on it, arranges things so that those who pursue that can't reach it. Because if they did reach it, they would go, what? You know, and that could be upsetting, even to laugh. I'm just guessing, but if enough people went, what? You know, even laugh might get a little like, well, wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. You know, just, you guys can't take a joke. You can look at it another way. Can your liver take a joke? I mean, you can pour alcohol in it for years and years, and it finally goes, hey! And you can say, well, can't you take a joke? Maybe it can, maybe it can't. If it reaches a point that you got to start some kind of verbal communication with your liver, it may be too late, you know, for it to be of any consequence whether they can take a joke or not. Because the joke may about be over, if you recall. Well, last time there was an old man told a kid that unless you're going to be able to become your own comedy team, that the joke's probably going to stay on you unless you can get to the point that you can furnish the punchlines to your own setup, which is what I was trying to drag us to in a minute about the true location is where a man thinks he is. What a man really knows, a revolutionist, comparably speaking, anything he really knows he made up anyway. But back to what if these other maps work, so we can leave that paragraph. If they did work without any attack, they simply do not work, as everyone knows. Well, they're not conclusive. Religion admits it. Well, we'll never know until we die. Which I know Sears and Roebuck and Kmart and everybody, as soon as they hear that, they think, Jesus, if I'd only thought of that. You know, it is the ultimate marketing tool. We guarantee everything, but not while you're alive. For those of you out there, you smartasses who got something against religion, don't laugh. You're missing the point. It is a stroke of genius because it's not religion, it's life. That life says, yes, I guarantee everything. All services, all goods, but not while you're alive. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to tell life, well, no, I don't like the arrangement. You know, you're not going to get a better bargain, but at least, you know, if you replace, as one guy tonight pointed out, that both civilization and religion took off. Once they took what they had been calling ignorance and renamed it hope. That is the guarantee, the unconditional guarantee of everything, but not while you're alive. At any rate, if these ordinary second order investigations, these methods of religion, science, which is harder to describe to some people because it's a different part of the brain, it sounds easier to pick on religion, to single it out. But if these things did work, which they do not, by their own admission, even science says, no, we don't have all the answers. They are not conclusive. If they're conclusive, they have died. And so they're not conclusive if they are alive. But if they were conclusive, and a revolutionist did it, and every promise that any religion, pick out anyone, had, or science in general, with a small s, any particular discipline of science, any of the social sciences, any philosophy, if it did work, and a revolutionist followed it, whether it took 10, 20, 30 years, if you want to really get picky about it, probably a lot less than that. But if he did do it, he said, well, I've got to do something, and he turned his attention on becoming or following the existentialist philosophy. And it did produce what he was looking for. If it took anywhere over, let's say I'm just guessing, if it took anywhere over 2 weeks, and it did work, remember, we're talking about something unusual now. We're talking about a nervous system we're calling a revolutionist. At the same time that he realized where he was, he would realize what he'd been doing. And he would be, to stay in the philosophical realm, may I suggest he'd be somewhat pissed. That I wasted 2 weeks studying a map. Does anybody remember my very old story of the ants? They were out wandering around. One band ended up over at a picnic table. They found this great feast, and they ran back to the main hill, and they tried to describe it. And the ants had never seen anything or heard anything about all these cakes and eclairs and German potato salad. And so the other ants, they ran back, and they made some sketches on a little piece of napkin. They brought it back, and the ants looked, and they go, well, we've still never seen anything like it. And so the first band of ants thought, well, what's lacking is perspective. What's lacking is we're just bringing representations. We're bringing back cheap maps. We're bringing back just these second order aids. So if you remember my story without me going, they go back once or twice and they keep drawing them out bigger and bigger. And they finally go back and the ants get together and they find 2 or 3 napkins that are in whole pieces. They undo them, they tape them together, and they actually make drawings of the stuff left on the table that's the same size as the food in the table. So that it's no longer a cheap representation. It's no longer a second order map. And so then they bring it back because now they to them, once we show the guys this, they can't say, well, trick photography, or the perspective is wrong, or what do you mean a chocolate cake? It's like some kind of little mice something. If we take it back now, it's the full size. So they take it back, if you remember my story, and the ants finally this time, the rest of them are somewhat amazed. But then they do that which surprised the first band. Rather than them going, hey, let's go over there, they all began living on this large paper map of, actual size of the picnic table. They all stay there. And the first band, I won't try to recall. Anyway, the first band is, somewhat nonplussed. That, may I suggest to you, is now, after all these years, updated in what I'm talking about now. If someone attempting to be, if you were the core part, the more active part of your brain, this first band of exploratory ants, they're out trying to find something. And if they started studying this kind of napkin, the best they could find, a religion, a philosophy, anything that is out there, anything that is collectively available, if it did finally work, they went, aha, now I see it. They would simultaneously, I suggest to you, understand that what I have studied is a map. I am now an expert on napkins taped together. But I have a degree from Yale in paper napkins taped together. But I suggest that a revolutionist ant brain would be disappointed, disturbed, upset, perhaps even annoyed. You mean I've spent 20 years looking in mirrors, looking through these instruments, and all I've done is it was a little trick, did a black thing around my eye, and I have become an expert in Baptist telescopes, which was not what I was after. They kept saying, well, if you look through a Baptist telescope or you look through a Jewish microscope, what you seek you shall find. I have, after X number of years, decades, I am now an expert on Jewish microscopes. Is this what I actually had in mind to start with? And people around you saying, oh, hey, you are now at the expert level. The revolutionists, I suggest you would think, something has gone awry. He would be, even if it succeeded at that level, he would be cheated because he has studied a second order, an indirect map, rather than simply studying that which he should have been looking at. He would be an expert, very likely. But if you recall, as strange as it is, and I'm glad we're running out of time because I wanted to make it stranger, was that an expert is someone in secondary affairs who can ignore the obvious. And that's exactly what it is. Not from their view. But if you could take the most religious, to stay with that for a minute, sincerely religious people, just sane, everyday people, I could get them very easily, for the sake of conversation and not all that speculative, to agree almost to my kind of description that what you're looking for, are great answers. You didn't become a Presbyterian it's not just a social thing with you, is it? Man, no. You're not here just so that they'll, vote you perhaps one year Mr. Presbyterian of the 4th Street Presbyterian Church. No. I've always had an interest. I I feel something. I want to know what's going on in life and blah, blah, blah. In other words, a sincerely religious person. And so I get them to agree that you're after something more than just, quote, being a Presbyterian. Perhaps even if they were ordinarily sophisticated enough, I could say your attempt is actually to be more than a Christian. Forget the denomination of Presbyterian. It's more than to be a Christian. And they might go, well, yeah, it is. I want to be complete. I want to do the will of God. I want to be in touch with the cosmos or something. You get them to say that. But can they do it? Not because they're dumb. If you're going to study, if you're going to be a Presbyterian, even if somebody you wouldn't normally be saying, but even if somebody could get you to say, and you considered it to be a more expanded view, somebody could get you to say, well, I do want more than just to be a Presbyterian. My family's Presbyterian, here I am. I got nothing against them, they're as good as anybody else. But yeah, I'm not just trying to be a Presbyterian. And you get them to say that. But then what's their choice? What's the best that they're going to come out of? Well, I read all the good Presbyterian books, and I listen to our Presbyterian minister. I go to all of our Presbyterian meetings. I go to our Presbyterian Bible study classes. In fact, about the only social life, I go to our little Presbyterian get-togethers. What is the only possible outcome? You might become an expert in Presbyterianism, which is, and let's say that you are an expert, that you become an expert in Presbyterianism. It has required that you ignore the obvious. I can do it several ways. How about the one I just did, which evidently most of you have already forgotten? The obvious being that that's not what the man started to do. I didn't start out to become a Presbyterian. I started out to try and complete myself. I started out trying to find out where I am. But now they have voted me Mr. Presbyterian of the decade here. Well, I got so involved, I took an early retirement at 50 from my company, and I went back to school. And I am now about to graduate here at the age of 54, and I am going to become a Presbyterian minister. And a man may enjoy it. But do you understand? He may now be. He's already writing a book. He's already becoming famous in Presbyterian circles. The man who became a Presbyterian minister at the age of 54, and who has some startling new insights, some new takes on the Presbyterian faith. But do you understand? To become an expert, he has now had to more and more ignore the obvious. In this case, as I said, I could do it several ways at least. But one of the cases of the obvious that he is having to ignore is, this is not what I started out to do. When I got on this bus, I thought, where I want to go is over there. And of course, then from certain views, apparently your ticket, you thought you gave the ticket to the driver and you said, this is where I want to go, and nobody said otherwise. But then you're on the bus and it seems like, well, it's not exactly where I wanted to go, but you don't know where to complain. Now you can get drunk, take drugs, spit out the window, shake your fist at the driver. But once you get on the bus, that is, become alive, and you can holler out, which many people do. They keep trying to holler at the driver. He doesn't seem to hear me. He hollers, when I got on this bus, I gave you a ticket saying I wanted to go to X. I wanted to find out what life's about. Now you're taking me down the road to Presbyterianism, or now you're taking me down the road to nowhere. At least stop and let me get the hell off. Not hardly. Then, of course, thankfully, in the back of the bus, nobody knows where it comes from, but under everybody's seat is just almost an unlimited supply of all sorts of things. Half bottles of gin, half pints, drugs, Presbyterianism's under there next to the gin, despair. Well, I guess next time we'll try to get into some more about what I was saying, that it's still a matter of having to make up what it is you know. Because it gets to be, it's fun to be pseudo-logical at times, isn't it? It becomes a process of winning, or it becomes a process that we finally eliminate, since no matter what you study in a second order way, such as a religion of some kind, won't take you where you want to go, then if we keep cutting all these down, we'll finally get down to the question of, well, what's left? And of course, since you're not an ordinary audience, we'll assume, then you won't say, Jesus, everything else is gone. I think I'll reach back under the seat and see if there's another bat wing of gin, which there is always another half pint of gin. I will not leave bad-mouthing gin. May General Gordon be with you. May the juniper berries bless you. May you fall into an endless vat of tonic and fresh limes. Oh! All right. You ready?
Yeah, we're ready again.
Okay. We're just a little short.
Short epilogue to follow.
Send note to the other cities so that this is just going to be real short, but sometimes they stagger their schedule and change it because they're assuming usually that the epilogue's as long as everything else.
Got it.
But tell me it's a short one. Of course, I say that now, we'll see in just a minute, won't we? You ready? I don't need that. Self-control. That's the ticket. There's no one denied that some of you, I almost say I didn't like the laughter, but it was a man who says, as long as I have my mind, I don't have to deal in self-incrimination. Okay. For you people, it was mainly, well, some of you here, but we have more and more new people showing up in other cities watching these tapes on a regular basis. Something I've said before, mentioned before, but I'd like to mention it again. That is, may I encourage you in all possible ways. If you've got any interest, if you've got any way to pursue this, I'll ask you to trust me to start with for a second, is to pursue some kind of creative activity. It is not on the basis that being an artist will make you reach some kind of Buddha consciousness. I don't have to go through this. People have been playing with this idea, and it's a reflection of something real, but there's been all sorts of would-be mystical schools and et cetera for thousands of years, believing that, well, if a man could pursue dance, yoga, such as that is just a variation, or a painter, a writer, that there's something about and then they want to start really getting into a whole lots of words and quotation marks and all caps, worse than Kyroots ever thought about. But about if someone could get in touch with their creative spirit, if someone could become spiritually original, and all sorts, because there is a tie to this. It's still based upon nothing mystical. It's still based upon the fact that the human nervous system is incomplete. It is not a finished product. But it is not the fact that just because some of you could paint, we got plenty of people with talent here and in the other cities, and musicians, dancers, wood carvers, and it doesn't have to be just that which is normally called or classified as the arts. It could be a cabinet maker or what. If you got something that you like to do, and you like to do it, whether anybody knows about it, absolutely regardless of the fact of whether you get paid for it, then that is a true hobby. And it's not going to, per se, blow you into some kind of new state of consciousness. But I simply want to encourage you again, because you're missing out on a good potential to pursue anything you like to do. If it's slopping on paint, and if none of us ever see it, if no one ever sees your works, if you enjoy it, do it. And of course, Kyroots a lot of times, in case anybody needs this, seems to pick on novelists, and well, especially poets, which I don't always make him do it, but it really should be in quotation marks. I don't mean absolute poets, because if any of you enjoy singing around rhyming, in fact, there's one of you that blank verse I used, but since it's been years since I was fooling around with Homer, but it was somebody here that gave me the one about there was a young man from Tucker. So I know that we have people with talent, poetic, But if you write, if there's anything, or sit around and noodle on a zither, just keep it to yourself. That was all for tonight. I just wanted to encourage all of you, because some of you have never heard me mention that. And it's just my encouragement. But it can serve a real purpose. Plus you're cheating yourself, if you want to look at it another way, of not doing it. And don't abandon it if you've got any kind of interest, or if you don't seem to have one, if you can come up with an apparent one. To go down to some, if you've never tried anything, go to a community college or go somewhere and take an art class. They got them for $12 or $15 somewhere. But if there's anything whittling, maybe you can become an expert spitter or something. But if there's something that you can do, and that you can be alone and do it. And some of you men, I don't want to hear about that. I was talking about things a little more creative. Things that you could show if you wanted to. How about that? But one more time, and there are things that are not necessarily classified in the arts. Because it doesn't have to be just poetry or anything that would normally be the classical arts. But, and some of you, try something. If you ever had the least interest in taking up dance, go try something. Something to where you are not being paid for it, your life is not depending upon it. It is a true hobby. It is getting close to what ordinary people, well, not close to, they would ordinarily call it creativity. But then you got to forget the ordinary version. You got to go beyond that, because then you're back to, how do you know you're creative at the ordinary level? Well, because I have a diploma here from the Creative School of Woodworking. And there's more than one person there. It's not my school. I didn't, put together this thing and work to myself. And there are other people who say that I am. That's not it. You got to go beyond that. If you enjoy it, it can be useful to your own nervous system. Truly, it can, whether anybody ever knows about it. But it just normally would fall, the easy way to talk about it is if you have any interest in any kind of creative stuff, is do it. Do it. That was all. See, I told you. Self-restraint, that's all it takes. But wait a minute, that does remind me of something. Well, bye out there. St. Quantum's is coming up, don't forget. All you people that's never been here, I like that. Some of you show up and then get upset.